All right, Nick, let's talk about the Florida Gators. The Gators really, I think, had a great end to the season. There's a bright future for them. And I think a lot of people are already starting to come around to the fact that this team is set to have a big year this year. And it's not just us saying it, it's not just people in the media. Now people are starting to prognosticate this team is going to do something really special and maybe finish this year off a lot higher than people expected. We'll get into that and break down what exactly it means for them going forward in just a second. But first, I'm Andrew, that's Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, Nick, as I alluded to, Florida Gators looking really good, and people are starting to notice. And if we go back the last few years, the Gators kind of disappointing finishes as far as where they finished in the SEC. But when we look ahead to this year, people are already starting to see this team being really high up and potentially being on the cusp of something special. Let's get into this article and we can talk about it more on the other side. This is from over on 3 Sports, and it says number 5 as far as where they have this Florida Gators team finishing in the SEC this season, all the way up to the number 5 spot. It says Florida is expected to surge up the SEC rankings this season during the first full season with DJ Lagway as the starting quarterback. He heads into a sophomore season 6-1 as a starting quarterback. This comes after head coach Billy Napier appeared to be on the head coaching hot seat after posting an 11-14 record during his first 2 seasons as a head coach with the Gators. The program missed out on the postseason in 2024, but took a giant leap forward in 2024 after Lagway joined the program. So I think this is showing people see Lagway, they see the future of this team and how they're going to be able to jump forward. And just to show exactly how big of a jump this would be for the Gators, let's look at the last 4 years versus the projected finish for Gators here. And we have a chart here showing 2021, they finished 12th in the SEC. We're not talking about college football rankings here, folks. We're talking about in the SEC 12th. That is bad. There's only 2 teams that were below them here. We look at 2022, they're 8th, and that's tied for 8th. So it's not even a solid 8th. Not very good ranking. And again, able to repeat the same success or lack thereof in 2023. 8th again there. Dipping down in 2024 a little bit to 10th overall in the SEC, but finally we see 2025 jumping up. We see how big of a jump this would be for them to be 5th in the SEC. And I think this is pretty important because if you look at the SEC, everyone knows it's a very powerful conference. There's a lot of good stuff that comes from SEC teams that finish very highly. And we look at our next graphic here showing all the teams in the college football playoff race here. And as we go down the list and we look at the teams that finish 5th here for the SEC, there's something kind of special about those teams. We look at Ole Miss, we look at the South Carolina Gamecocks right here, and those are 2 teams that were on the cusp of making it into the college football playoff last year, not just making it into the postseason. Those are teams that people argued for, there were votes for. There was a non-zero chance that those teams make it into the college football playoff. And if we look at the Gators from having, like we said, going back to that chart, really terrible finishes the last 4 years to now being a team that is on the cusp of potentially being a college football playoff team, I think something really special is happening down in Gainesville. I think this team has some really good stuff going with Lagway behind the helm. I think we're going to see a massive turnaround for the Gators in this 2025 season. Curious what your thoughts are on all of this, Nick. But before we get to you, Gators fans, in the comment section below, kind of talking about this Florida team, the turnaround. That turnaround's really been predicated on DJ Lagway and how successful he was, 6-1 as a starter last year. We want to know, though, in the comment section below, talking quarterbacks, who's your favorite Florida quarterback of all time? There's been a lot of really great ones. One in particular won a lot of big games for the Gators, but let us know in the comment section below, who's your favorite Florida quarterback of all time? Put it in the comment section below. But nonetheless, Nick, what are your thoughts on everything involving the Gators here?
Yeah, I mean, first to answer your question, I tell you what, someone who I always felt was criminally underrated was Chris Leak. He handled the transition from Zook to Meyer and was kind of the stabilizing influence pre-Tebow that obviously had a big factor in them winning the national championship, their first under Meyer. So I give him a lot of credit. Threw a lot of touchdowns to Dallas Baker, the touchdown maker. I'm sure a lot of you guys understand that, remember that. I mean, that was sort of a, people forget because Tebow followed after that, but I thought that was a very critical transition quarterback who doesn't get his due. Anyway, when you talk about where the Florida Gators and DJ Lagway and this program is today, I think we have to look at what they've done. We've covered a lot this offseason. Recruiting, absolutely crushing it. Young talent stepping up in spring ball, looking better and better, crushing it. Really good hires, under the radar moves to solidify the program from a staff perspective, crushing it. And look, this is all on paper and this is all practicing against yourself this offseason. You have to see how they play on Saturdays. Get it, understand, 100% agree. But you cannot deny that this is the best Florida has looked in the entire Napier era by far. And I think that's what people are starting to realize, that if you look at their talent level and look at what we've seen from the players currently on their team from last season, namely the quarterback position, they have a serious potential here to go win 10 games, win 11 games, win 9 games, and be in that ballpark, like you mentioned, to compete for a playoff berth. And I think they are going to be around that world when it's all said and done. And when people look at what it takes to win in the big-time era of college football that we're in right now, extended playoff, you got to have quarterback, right? You got to have a certain baseline level of talent. This was the dirty secret of Notre Dame that a lot of people kind of forget, is that the Fighting Irish under their coach Marcus Freeman, and we've talked about it a lot, they've done a great job slowly elevating their baseline talent to the point they had so much depth. When they did have some injuries, they weren't reliant on one star or this star here, this star there. They were able to beat a lot of teams in the postseason, making it all the way to the national championship game. That was sort of the fault in a Lincoln Riley strategy at Oklahoma and then at USC. He's trying to correct it now, where it's like, okay, we're going to just load up around a couple big-time stars, and they'll take us to the promised land. You're one injury or one effective scheme against those stars away to have your entire team fall apart. Florida, over the past basically calendar year or so, has done a great job elevating their talent across the board. Now, it isn't where it was during the Meyer era, and it's got a long way to go, in my opinion, to overcome the rest of the top contenders in the SEC, namely Texas and Georgia. But they're heading in the right path, and they've gotten a lot better. And I think that's what people, whether it's On3, whether it's us, whether it's ESPN, whether it's, everybody is saying, look, this Florida team is really trending in a good direction. A lot of people talk about Lagway, and he's a really good player. He's got a bright future. I think he's going to do a lot of great things for the Gators this season and certainly the following season as well. But I think Napier deserves credit that across the board, they've gotten a lot better. And I think this is a team 100% on the upswing. I think there's two kind of dark horse programs right now in the SEC, the old SEC East, South Carolina and Columbia, the South Carolina Gamecocks, and of course the Florida Gators out of Gainesville. Both of these teams, I think, are going to surpass what a program like Tennessee was last season. I think Tennessee's going to have some issues. I think Georgia and Texas are still going to be Georgia and Texas. I think Alabama's going to do a lot of good things. I think A&M's still a year away. I'm not sold on LSU. They got too many flaws, I think. Ole Miss always feels like a fun team, but then they always kind of disappoint. Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Missouri, okay, fine. I'm not really giving you guys a lot of seriousness. Kentucky, in terms of being a threat, Auburn still feels a ways away, even though they're doing some good things. Basically, what I'm getting through here is that the SEC out of Texas and Georgia is wide open, right? And I think even though Alabama's going to do some good things this year, I think that number 4 spot in the SEC, maybe even number 3, could be up for grabs for Carolina or Florida. And right now, both of those programs, great quarterbacks, coaches making a lot of good moves. Billy Napier, Florida Gators, traditionally better than South Carolina. Obviously, don't have to really say it, but it is true. I think their talent base is better, and that means they're in a strong position when it's all said and done to be at the top of the SEC and to get into the postseason. And if you have elite quarterback play and if you have a good talent base, that's when you can really make some noise in the playoffs. We saw that with Ohio State, right? Good, solid quarterback play, elite level talent base. They ran the table, upset a lot of teams. There's a lot of other teams that were great stories that had a couple star players, like Boise State, for example. They didn't have the talent base. Clemson, SMU, no talent base. They eventually fell apart. I think Florida, they've got the overall talent across the board. They've got the quarterback. They're trending in the right direction. I think right now, if you had to tell me, I think they make the playoff, and I think they make a lot of noise before it's all said and done.
Yeah, Nick, I think what you're saying here, as far as when we look at the SEC, when we look at these rankings, as far as what these teams can do, I think you're absolutely right. I think, we're already hearing people say, oh, maybe Florida's 5th in the SEC. After a bad year, that's really a big time thing. And you look at the other teams in the SEC and what they have, and I think stability and quarterback play is really important here. But let's go through the list. Texas, although Arch Manning is looking talented and people are really highly on him, we're talking about a Texas team that lost their lead signal caller and Quinn Ewers. So turnover at the quarterback position. Don't think it's going to knock them out too much, but there is that option there. Georgia, Carson Beck goes to Miami. That's a team, Georgia. There's, some tumultuation at the top of the quarterback position for them. I don't think that's going to really knock them out, like you said, but that is something important. You look at Tennessee, Nico gone. They're going to have to figure out whatever they're going to do at the quarterback position. I think, like you said, knocks them out pretty far. I do think that's going to affect them. Ole Miss, Jackson Dart gone. They got to figure out what they're doing at quarterback position. Alabama, they got to figure out what they're doing at the quarterback position. Jalen Milroe's gone. We think it's going to be Simpson, but, there's question marks there. Needless to say, everybody at the top of what was the threshold of the best teams in the SEC, there's a lot of question marks there. What teams remain? It's teams, like you said, like the South Carolina Gamecocks, like, LSU's still there, but I think there's still too many question marks. I don't know how real they are, but the Florida Gators are in the heat of all of it. That DJ Lagway effect, having consistency at the quarterback position from year to year, I think it's going to be a big one for them. And I think all said and done, like you said, this team lining up to do some dangerous work in the SEC and potentially in the college football playoff as well.